Hello, everyone, and welcome to 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the small, significant, and yet very strategic choices that all of us can make in order to become the best version of ourselves. My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and I am the host of 3 Words, and I'm here with a very familiar podcast guest, none other than probably one of our youngest life coaches on the team, but that's truly the best looking and the most dynamic speaker.
Get out of here.
None other than my dear friend, Casey Greenawalt. Casey, good to have you here today. Would you share 3 words for this discussion?
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I don't know about the best looking, but youngest is definitely true. Our 3 words for today are 3 very powerful words. Offer an apology.
Offer an apology. You know, I have said on several occasions, and I stand by this, that the 10 most important words in the English language are these: I was wrong, I am sorry, and will you forgive me? All 3 of those need to be working together. First of all, taking ownership. I was wrong. Secondly, expressing remorse. I am sorry. And then inviting a response. Will you forgive me? But it's hard.
It is so hard. In that first part, you said taking ownership. So like someone wrongs you or you wrong somebody. And that's usually how an apology starts is there's something wrong happening in the relationship. There's a conflict. There's an issue in some way. Someone is wronging the other person. And so the first step is like admitting that you are wrong. But I think the problem sometimes is, and I experience this and I'm sure our listeners do as well, but I don't think I did anything wrong. So how do I take ownership over something that I don't actually think I did? And I when my wife and I first got married, that was something that I struggled with a lot because I overthink things. And so if her feelings were hurt, I would try to think through, why are her feelings hurt? I don't understand. I can't get that. I didn't do anything wrong. So for me to own whatever it was, like that wasn't happening.
Well, we tend to prioritize being right.
Right.
Over relationship itself. Like we want to be right. Like the thought of not being right. In a situation, even if that means, because again, ownership requires me to say, you know what, in this particular situation, I'm not perfect.
It kills the ego.
Yeah. And I'm not right. And I want instead to have a relationship with you.
Yeah, 100%. And ultimately that's what apologies are all about. It's saving the relationship. That short, maybe 30-second, minute, 5-minute, 10-minute conversation that's around an apology, it's worth the pain. It's worth the tough conversation because ultimately that relationship is going to be a lot deeper. I mentioned to you before we started, my sister and I, when we were little, we would fight all the time. I mean, there were a couple stories that I could probably share that would just make you laugh. We were on the stairs and my mom walked in and I had like a broom. I was poking her and she was throwing stuff. We used to fight so much. And so a lot of apologies were needed to be said in my family.
Forced apologies or sincere apologies?
A little bit of a mix of both. But this one was sincere. And my sister, I hope she's listening right now because it's meant a lot to me. I was in high school. We had a big fight and she wrote me a note and she left it on my desk in my bedroom. And it was just one of the most thoughtful things. She wasn't always really good with her words and when she was a kid and great at expressing how she felt. But in that apology, she really, I think, expressed some of the feelings that she never had said before. And our relationship continues to get better because we're willing to step into, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up. I yelled. I raised my voice. I did something that hurt your feelings. And even if I didn't mean it, I can still recognize that it hurt you in some sort of way.
So she expressed remorse. So obviously, you know, that first piece is taking ownership. And then she expressed remorse. Did she, in any part in that letter, invite a response? Because I know that's one of the reasons I like to share this third piece of an apology. And that is, will you forgive me? Because again, I want a response, not for me, but for us.
Right.
And for our relationship to feel like, no, there's actually closure. There's been a mending. There's been a repair of that which is broken. Yeah.
Because an apology can be selfish, right? Like, if I feel bad about something and I just want to say sorry to you so I don't have to feel bad about it anymore, that's not an apology for the sake of the relationship. That's a selfish apology. And I'm sure I've done that before. And I'm sure we can all think of circumstances we've done that. In that specific circumstance, my sister was young, so no. But I think as we continue to get older and continue to learn what it looks like to have a healthy brother-sister relationship, we've stepped into those conversations. Okay, what's next, right? You made a mistake. We admitted that was wrong. Here's how I hurt your feelings. I might not have meant to make that mistake and do that and hurt you in that way. But moving forward, what are the things that we can do to maybe not necessarily avoid that mistake, but to just be conscious that is an emotion, that is a feeling that is probably going to get brought up again. And I say that about my sister, but that's true in my marriage, my friendship with some of my closest friends. The deepest friendships I have are the ones where we can say, hey, that bothered me. Oh, how come?
Right.
Let me understand your perspective. Let me see where you're coming from so I can apologize where I was wrong. And ultimately we can have a deeper, closer, more full friendship because I know you more now. It's hard. It's messy, but I think at the end of the day, an apology, grace, forgiveness, like those are the key components of a healthy relationship.
And I want to model that not only in deep relationships, but I want to model that in everyday life. So I'm actually coaching one of the athletic teams, all of the athletic teams at Bowling Green State University as a life coach. And I was actually meeting with one of the teams, and I had said to this team, I'm going to send you a link to, ironically, one of our 3 Words podcasts that I want you to listen to in advance of our next discussion so that we can have that conversation. I had forgotten, genuinely just forgotten to do that. But instead of saying, well, this came up or life got busy, I simply stood before the team and I said, ladies, I was wrong. I am so sorry I did not send that to you when I said I would send that to you. And then I actually said, will you forgive me? Now, they weren't deeply offended. They weren't in pain because I didn't send that. Right. But I felt like I needed to model the things that I talk about. And it was interesting. As I said that, will you forgive me? They all began to nod because we're all masked, we're socially distanced, but they began to nod. And I didn't realize, Casey, how much that means to me because I did. I had dropped the ball. It wasn't a significant thing in the grand scheme of things, but I had dropped the ball. I had said I was going to do something. I didn't do something. But I think even in the simple or what would be considered minor offenses, we can still use this kind of model to be able to do that. But let's just be honest. Asking for an apology or offering an apology, as we're talking about here, it feels awkward. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. First of which, we have to, if we're offering an apology, our tendency is to want to blame. Our default is to want to blame others. Thus, what we talked about earlier, like I'm right, you're wrong. And so we want to think that we're always right. We want to think that we've always are in the right and we've done the best and there's nothing to be. And when I actually offer an apology, I have to acknowledge that I'm actually to blame this situation. I think another thing that a barrier, an obstacle that gets in the way of apologizing and make it feel awkward is if I already have a sagging self-image, if I'm already struggling with who I'm becoming and how I feel about myself, I almost feel like offering an apology knocks me down a few more pegs as opposed to doing the opposite.
An apology is a sign of weakness, right?
Yeah, we think that as opposed to apology, because you even said it when your sister did that, when people have done that in my life, it just kind of enhances the relationship, 100%. But it also breeds respect.
Yeah, it does.
Like I trust you more.
I was just going to say that it's trust, right? That's what you're building when you apologize to somebody is you're building trust. You're inviting someone in to see your mistake as it was and to say, I did this and I'm sorry for it. I don't want to do it again. Can you see that part of me now and give me the forgiveness and let's move forward. And you're right. It's trust. And I think the more relationships I have where the apologies are more frequent, the more trust I have with those people. I trust them to admit they're wrong.
And you said it right there in the conversation you were just having with me that, there's a sense with an apology, I don't want to do it again. And I think that's the third reason that oftentimes apologies feel awkward, because if I initiate an apology with you, I'm acknowledging and even setting up on some level a sense of accountability.
Totally.
That I'm actually going to change, that I'm actually going to do it differently next time. So that's why, and I've had several clients and obviously friends, and I can look in the mirror and see this in my own life, is that to offer an apology to my wife or to my son or to my daughter or to my friend means that I am acknowledging that I may not, but I should at least do it differently, do it better next time. And there's a sense of accountability that we don't necessarily want, because then say, for instance, we do apologize. Well, then the person who we apologize to when we do it again might say, wait, you apologized for that and yet you were still acting this way. But again, even then, we're not going to do it perfectly. We might need to apologize again. There's no limits on the amount of apologies. If we are people in progress, if we are people who are not perfect, we should begin to normalize that apologies, offering an apology is just a regular part of the rhythms of life.
It's part of the human experience because you just said it, we're all flawed. We make mistakes. Like we go back to our primal selfish instincts. It's what we do as human beings. And when we do that, we often impact the people around us in a negative way. And so to be self-aware and to say, I made a mistake, I'm sorry for that. You're right. It creates that trust. And another thought too, I think, sometimes people can maybe over apologize for the same thing over and over again. Cause you were mentioning that I had a kind of a young kid on my team and continued to say sorry and sorry and sorry. And someone coached him and said, okay, stop apologizing or change the behavior. Stop apologizing or change the behavior. I thought that was really good advice. I was like, that's great. Because apologies are powerful, but they lose their power when you don't actually step into trying to change the behavior. Doesn't mean you won't mess up again. It's just what action step are you going to take to actually try and change whatever behavior it was that's causing you to have to say sorry in the first place.
And let's just acknowledge as well, I think a very honest reality that for many of us as we're having this conversation, I'm guessing even for those who are listening or watching right now, we can't often recall a situation where someone has offered us a sincere apology. So we lack models. We lack mentors in this regard. You know, we've gotten the kind of half-hearted apology, like, sorry if you're so sensitive. Yeah. Or sorry if I hurt you.
Sorry your feelings are hurt.
Yeah, sorry your feelings are hurt. But I feel like to actually enter into, and we don't have a lot of models because typically people they just kind of push it under the rug, metaphorically, or they scream and yell and then just pretend it didn't happen and just hope it goes away. And again, let me just say this. Apologies are not necessary for the continuation of a relationship, but they are essential to actually deepening and having healthy relationships. So just because you refuse to apologize, or people within your sphere of influence, your family, friendship circle, network, never apologize to each other. And I've heard people say this, like, we don't apologize to each other. We just know. Like it all just kind of blows over. We all love each other. Okay, I get that. But my guess is that relationship on some level is probably a little dysfunctional at the worst. And at the very least, maybe more shallow than it can be because, and you've even said, because of those letters that your sister wrote you, apology letters. Because again, I think an apology letter could be just as significant as an apology spoken word.
And when you're 14 years old and you're a girl and you've got emotions, it's the best way to explain your feelings. So,
but here's the cool thing about that too. You now have forever in your possession. I don't know if you kept them.
I do.
Okay.
I still have them.
Okay. That says something. You have in your possession a very clear example of how much she cares about you and how humble she was in that moment. And just the relationship is powerful because those things have been expressed. And even to the point where you would save them to this day, it's made an impact on you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you said it. Apologies are, they're not essential to have a relationship, but they are essential to experience the fullness of relationship, of friendship. And I think when we can step into that in humility, to look outside of our perspective. I had a great leader say to me, a great leader sees the room from everybody's perspective. Yeah. And oftentimes, if you can do that, you can see where you're wrong. And you can see how you're negatively and positively impacting the people that are in that room. And an apology is a huge part of that, for sure.
And friend, I think everyone listening today, particularly during these challenging times, the one thing that we have going for us and the thing that we do continue to value and prioritize in the midst of turbulence and lacking control in so many areas of our life is the reality, the depth, the connection we have to human beings 100%. and our connection to people. Yeah. And so why would we not want to have deep and meaningful relationships? Why would we not want to mentor and model to the next generation that we can do relationships, not just barely, at the surface level, but actually in this robust, fantastic way. So I'm glad we had this conversation today. Me too. And I want us all to think, is there anyone in our lives right now, right here even, that maybe even in the last week, something didn't go very well, that beginning in the next moment, not next week, not next month, but now, is there anyone to whom comes to mind where you need to offer an apology? For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.